I think being the first to market is always has its quirks and challenges. So we were the first company in the world to ever sell cultivated meat for pet food. We were the first company in Europe to ever sell any form of cultivated meat. And we went through a process with the UK regulators, and we've kept a very open, very transparent dialogue with those UK authorities so that we can build that trust with them. And I think that's the key thing when you're first to market, is giving people the reassurance and trust in what you're doing. And if you look at any food trend in human history, whether that is when we started eating potatoes, when we started planting corn, this is really how we're conceptualizing it is the next step in how we produce meat. And that is not an overnight adoption cycle, and no one is expecting that.
Hey, Owen, thanks for joining in on Scouted by GreyB. I'm very happy to see you here. I'm glad that you made it here. And just to get started, how are you? How's everything going in Meatly?
Hey, Shabazz, I'm great. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to be talking to you today. We're in a very exciting point at Meatly, which I'm happy to explain more about as we get into the conversation.
Oh, that's great. So for background, of course, I have done my research and I've read about Meatly, but our audience might not know. So can you very quickly tell us what is Meatly doing, and what kind of solution or challenges you are solving?
So Meatly is creating cultivated meat or lab-grown meat, which means from a single sample of cells, we can create an infinite amount of meat forevermore without ever involving another animal. And we do that by providing the nutrients that those cells need. So these are amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. And the cells then grow. And after about a week or 10 days, we have essentially a chicken pate product. And the advantage of this is that we can use it as a substitute for traditional meat, but we use dramatically less land. So we're going to use 99% less land, 95% less water, 75% fewer CO2 emissions. And we don't use any antibiotics, steroids, or hormones. And at Meatly, our starting market is for pet food. So 20% of meat globally is eaten by our pets and not us. And so we are going to replace the meat used in pet food with Meatly chicken and other products. And then we can also do human food down the line as well.
It's good to hear. And I certainly 25% figure is really huge, because I already know that meat industry is very huge, and it has a huge impact on not just the animal production side, but on the environment as well. And I think that's the whole driving factor behind cultured meat industry, is that, instead of going through all that process, you just do it in the lab. So it makes sense, and I believe you're doing great work. But it makes me curious, Owen. So cultured meat has this perception, and there are several factors behind it. The one is of course, the final end product. Many people who eat meat, they say that, and many companies as well, which are struggling with this, is that the texture and the form factor of the cultured meat is very different than the real thing. And that kind of creates a friction for them, the adoption challenge. I'm sure it might not be that big in pet food industry, but it still might be there, some texture, and the taste might as well be a factor. So can you let me know, is that something that you also faced, or have you solved it, or is there a way around it that you're going with?
So I think that used to be an issue with plant-based products in particular, where the texture and the taste wasn't quite there. But with cultivated meats, because we are using animal cells, we are growing complete meat products. And so this is very equivalent to traditional meat, and it will taste the same and it will look the same. And so we have really overcome those challenges. And for pet food in particular, I'm very excited that my two cats, Lamo and Zanzi, have tried Meatly chicken, and that they prefer it to their normal chicken diet, and they prefer it to ready to eat chicken as well. So it is past the test with my cats, which is always good news.
Yeah, I think your pets might also have some biases.
It's very difficult to influence a pet. Any cat owner will tell you, you can't really get them to do what you want to do. So
yeah, I understand. I'm kidding. So okay, so texture is covered, and also I think one of the question that came to my mind right away when I was reading is the nutrition side of things. How does things looks on the nutrition side? Because so far what I understand is traditional pet food, which is made by meat, they use a lot of different type of meat, or I would say organs, which has different nutrition values. For example, calcium comes from bone powder, and some nutrition come from liver, and some nutrition come from different parts of the animal. So how does that nutrition scale looks like in Meatly's case?
So pet food has a very wide variety of ingredients and components. So you have everything from 100% meat-based to 100% plant-based, and everything in between. Our Meatly chicken has an almost identical nutritional profile to chicken breast. So the amino acid profile is literally maps 1-to-1. And so, yeah, when we include it in products, it would act just like chicken breast. And then, as you say, most pet food products are combined ingredients. And so we would be looking to include those with other ingredients. And those could be plant-based or they could be animal-based, but that kind of core meat component would be coming from meaty chicken.
Okay, I understand. I think if we are talking about the nutrition chicken beast, it makes perfect sense to have it should have the same consistency, nutrition value as well. So, and I think the stage at Meatly is in currently you're not directly selling to pet owners. You're currently just looking for partnerships with pet food producers or large companies which are making pet food. Can you share any challenge you faced or when any common question you come across whenever you're talking to these companies? What kind of things they are concerned about that you have already addressed or maybe are in the process of addressing?
So we sell B2B to pet food manufacturers and meat processors. And so we are providing this solution to industry for them to put into their products and ingredients as they see fit. And we really want to work with industry. So we already have partnerships and investment from some of the leading companies in the industry. And the reason that they're so excited about it is twofold. From a consumer perspective, we have the sustainability, the welfare, the kind of health benefits, but also from a very commercial perspective, this is a reliable, consistent, safe ingredient. So we can have no contamination issues. We have a very long shelf life. So there's also very tangible commercial benefits to meaty chicken.
Makes sense. And I think because the nature of the product, it might also work out with any kind of pet food format they're working with, right? Wet food, kibbles.
Yeah.
So is that a challenge as well, or it is already solved?
So initially we'll focus on wet food, but yeah, exactly. We could do complete food or treats or dried. In pet food, there's actually a lot more innovations. So you have things like freeze dried and cold pressed and oven baked. And so there's all of these formats that we could play into. But meaty chicken, again, it acts just like chicken breast. And so we can put it into any of these products and any of these components.
Makes sense. I think most of the areas when dealing with this industry, I think you're already covered on those. Another question that I was curious, and I'm sure this has to do with your business direction, but why pet food only? Because I think you're working on the very base raw product. So you should be able to use it for human consumption as well. But is there a reason behind that, or
So pet food is our starting point, and part of that is the enthusiasm we've seen from pet food manufacturers. And a lot of them have tried plant-based and they've tried insect-based, and they're looking for more sustainable, high welfare ingredients. And so that's why they're very excited about cultivated meat. It's also a gap in the market. We're one of the first cultivated pet food companies in the world, and the regulation is also more straightforward. And so there's just several advantages for us starting in pet food. And then we can look to license our technology or our processes into human food in the future.
Okay, makes sense. I think what you said it makes perfect sense that pet food companies might be more open and the regulation space might not be as strict as it may be for human consumption when making food for human consumption. And I read on the website that you already have some regulation approved for pet food consumption. So can you share, was it challenging to get those regulation, or was it easy sailing? I'm sure it wasn't easy sailing, but maybe you would like to share some story behind that.
I think being the first to market has its quirks and challenges. So we were the first company in the world to ever sell cultivated meat for pet food. We were the first company in Europe to ever sell any form of cultivated meat. And we went through a process with the UK regulators, so the Food Standards Agency, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and the APHA, which is the Animal Plant Health Agency. And that process was really a lot about explaining what we're doing, sharing information, being very open and transparent. It took about 18 months or 2 years to kind of get through all of those questions and quirks. And then last July, we became the first company to get regulatory approval. And this February, we became the first company to sell product. And we've kept a very open, very transparent dialogue with those UK authorities so that, we can build that trust with them. And I think that's the key thing when you're first to market, is giving people the reassurance and trust in what you're doing.
I think, it makes sense. And I think Europe is especially strict with these kind of regulations. So I think if you're good to go in that geography, you are all set for others as well, most likely. So I think most of my curiosity about the audience perception, the back end of the product is now fulfilled, but I'm also interested in the technical side of things. So of course there are cultured meat is a growing industry. A lot of companies have found different ways to culture it using some media and some bioreactors. I'd like to understand your side of things, like what kind of technical challenge did you face? I think so far what I understand is you are also going with the bioreactor way of producing these cultured cells, but maybe any technical challenge your team faced to make this a reality that you'd like to share with me.
So the core technology is very established and very standardized, more or less, in cell culture or cultivated meat. And it all comes from the biopharmaceutical industry. So the technology has been used to make cellular therapies or growing different types of human cells. So some of our team are making neural cells or heart cells before as a way of treating human diseases or issues. The challenge with that is all of the technology is incredibly expensive because pharmaceuticals can sell for a lot higher price point. So what we needed to do was reverse the economics from being very low volume, high value products to being high volume, low value products. And that is the core challenge of cultivated meat. And it really comes down to two things. One is the nutrients that you're feeding the cells, typically can be 500 pounds per liter, which is astronomically expensive. And the second is the equipment that you're using is all far too expensive as well. So immediately, those have been the things that we focused on. On the nutrients, we've brought the cost down from 500 pounds per liter to 22 pence per liter. So 4,000 times cost reduction, which is truly incredible work. That's with a team of 10 people.
Crazy to even hear this, yeah.
In 3 years, having spent about £5 million. Really finding these economic, fast ways of scaling cultivated meat. And the second is the equipment. Again, as I said, that's far too expensive. So these bioreactors, which are very similar to fermentation tanks. We have a 300-litre bioreactor running in our lab. That is typically, if you're using standard equipment, £250,000. Ours is about £15,000. So again, dramatic cost reduction. It's about 15 times cost reduction. And these now mean that we have rebuilt the economics of cell culture and cultivated meat and can now start to scale, which is the next step we're about to take.
Okay. I think that was also going to be my next question. What are your plans about scaling and where are you in terms of production currently? And do you see any immediate challenge that you're trying to solve to scale this?
So we, as I mentioned, we're at about 300 liters at the moment in our pilot facility, which we are hoping to move into in the next 6 to 9 months. We'll go to 2,000 liter and 20,000 liter bioreactors, which means we'll go from producing kilograms to producing tons of product. And that is really the tipping point and the inflection point for us and the rest of the industry. And there are challenges in scaling and there's certain dynamics that need to be controlled, but they have been done before. And it's been proven that people can reach 20,000 liters or 30,000 liters in cell culture. And so they don't feel as significant as the challenges we've already overcome on cost reduction.
So, I mean, what is that challenge when it comes to scaling cell culture based technologies? So I think one very common question usually comes up is that maintaining the consistency of the product that you're making, because cell cultures, you have to be very conscious about the environmental control and basically the media that you're using to grow cultures, and then it becomes even complex as you scale. Is that the challenge currently that you will have to figure out to really scale this, or is there something else as well on the line?
There's really just 3 things you need to control or address. One is sterility. So making sure that your processes are sterile, that no bacteria or yeast is getting into the bioreactors. The second is oxygen transfer. So making sure all cells need oxygen, including our own. And so you need to make sure there's enough oxygen in the tank. And the bigger the tank gets, the more specific you need to be in how that oxygen is transferred and the aeration. And the third is the shear stress. So animal cells are very delicate because they don't have a cell wall. They only have a membrane. That's great because they're flexible, which allows us to move, but it means that they are more susceptible to what's called shear stress, which basically the force of you trying to stir the tank can harm the cells. I mean, they don't grow as fast. So those are really the 3 things that you need to address.
Okay. So I'd like to hear your views on how are you solving those challenges? And is that something yet to be figured out?
It's not to be figured out. So we have solutions. And again, those solutions have all been managed already. So there are people running 20 and 30,000 liter bioreactors. So they're parameters to be controlled and addressed, but they're not unknown hurdles. The big unknowns we feel like we've solved around how do you get the media cost low enough? How do you reformat the bioreactors? How do you build a process that is cheap enough. Now we've done that. We've built the fundamental building blocks, and it's just about getting bigger.
Yeah, I think it's the smart way to go about it, that because of course cell cultures by nature are costly, and the industry that you're in, since you're currently working with partners, they above all they would prefer partners which can match their current product prices. So it makes perfect sense, and that you have like the fundamentals covered first. So I think I'm nearing to my last few questions, and this is something that is I ask all the founders in working in the industry. This is like just for my personal curiosity. So first is, what kind of trend do you see happening, or where do you see this market moving? Do you see like a very widespread adoption of cultured based or lab grown meat in pet industry, or is there going to be like a specific market for this, and there's going to be like a specific section for plant based as well? Or do you see like, I'm just want to get your views about this industry since you are like in the game.
I think the one thing I would stress about this industry is it is not AI. So it is not going to be, right, ChatGPT got whatever 30% of the human population using it in a year. Like that's not a food product. But so we will start in niches. I don't know whether that niche is premium pet food, whether that niche is Michelin star restaurants. We'll start in those smaller environments, and then this will build and blossom. And if you look at any food trend in human history, whether that is when we started eating potatoes, when we started planting corn, this is really how we're conceptualizing it is the next step in how we produce meat. And that is not an overnight adoption cycle, and no one is expecting that or should be expecting that. But what we are seeing is a lot of excitement in these starting markets, a lot of interest in these starting markets, and a lot of success in these starting markets. And then we can start kind of blossoming out from those. And so I think we'll see more and more cultured products as our process becomes more efficient, becomes cheaper. And my hope is, in 10 to 20 years, this is a very fast growing part of the market. And in 30 to 40 years, this becomes a significant part of how we are producing not just meat products, but all types of products, because it has this environmental welfare and health benefits.
Okay. I think then this makes me curious now that you mentioned that the goal is to produce like all kinds of, that is where the industry is headed. So for Meatly, do you also see yourself, once you scale chicken based meat cell cultures, then you move to beef based or pork based. Do you plan on like including more type of meat in the products you're making?
Yes. Yeah. So we're building all of the fundamental technology needed to produce cultivated meat. And then there are nuances and differences, whether you're doing chicken or fish or beef or lamb, but the fundamental processes, techniques, and equipment are very similar. And so we see it as we're solving these fundamental challenges that then allow us to produce different types of meat.
Okay, makes sense. And just one last question. And again, this is related to specifically your background. And I think I don't know how accurate this information is, but I read that previously you have worked in a insect-based protein venture, and then you moved away from that, and then you started your own like cell culture based, this basically Meatly. So, and I think your background is also like very technical. So just want to ask first is this, what I understand is basically the goal behind cell-based nutrition is simply to make meat industry more sustainable and less cruelty driven, which it really is. So did you feel the same when you were working in the insect based protein industry?
So with insect based, the real great benefit is that you can feed insects any organic waste, and they will essentially turn it into compost, while also, depending on which type of insect you're using, come 40 to 50% protein themselves. And so they're an amazing waste recycling organism. The kind of main drawback for me is the same time that I became vegan and started questioning whether I should be breeding insects and selling them as chicken feed. The answer for me was no, but there are nuances in that, and there are many places and systems where we were replacing fish meal with insects in a far more sustainable way. We were producing high quality protein and compost, which could be used to increase farmers' yields. And so there were a lot of benefits in that system. But for me, I wanted to see something that was genuinely zero cruelty and had broad adoption. Obviously, insect-based in most regions for humans is not going to have broad acceptance that a pure kind of meat product is.
Okay, I think it's a very strong driving factor, and I really appreciate you sharing this with me. I think with that, when I'm like all out of question, I've all of my
Perfect.
curiosity quenched. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And, I got to know a lot about the industry background. And I really love how you are solving the fundamentals of cultured meat industry, because I believe your technology could benefit a lot of other companies as well. So really, thanks for taking me through all this and joining us in Scouted by GreyB.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been great. And yeah, very excited. Happy to come back on and tell you how we've progressed in a year or so. And yeah, look forward to hearing more.